The next story, it actually comes out of comments she said, and the former commissioner, her predecessor's predecessor, criticized some of her comments with regards to what it meant for private gun ownerships. I don't necessarily want to start there. One of the main things that struck me was when she was answering the questions, I believe it was, well, she was answering a question and she gave statistics with regards to guns and bullets being imported. And over the last several years, the figures that she's speaking about, it's thousands of guns per year and millions of rounds of ammunition every year since 2017, the highest being 2020 with 57 million rounds of ammunition. And apparently it is for non-law enforcement purposes. Now, I have a hard time understanding, I'm trying to figure it out, just what could we have in TNT that would necessitate 57 million. Again, this was 2020, it came back down to 18 million the following year, and I think 8 million the year after that. But at least in 1 year, it was 57 million rounds of private ammunition for non-law enforcement. I don't know if that means military, and it's being somewhat facetious with regards to the classification, but that's a lot of rounds. The former Commissioner Griffith, he was saying, well, why are you questioning the amount of ammunition private citizens have? Yeah, if it's 10 or 30, I don't care. But 57 million, what do we even have the need for that in TNT?
I actually think there is a greater need for scrutiny of the amount of ammunition private citizens has, and there needs to be greater accountability. Now, as far as I'm aware, every single bullet is supposed to be accounted for on a gun range.
Yeah.
Every single bullet is supposed to be accounted for at any gun dealers or ammunition or law enforcement agency there. That particular place always needs to account for it. It needs to be signed for, at least as far as I'm aware. But there needs to be clarification on what non-law enforcement is, simply because in the most respectable manner, even if the Trans-Tobago Police Service at times cannot account for ammunition, for example, we've heard of instances of where there are bullets at scenes which have TTPS markings, but the police service don't know anything about it.
Or Defence Force markings.
Or Defence Force markings, but these agencies know nothing of it, and when they go back to their stock, we could account for it. These particular statistics of 57 million, is it collated data from all legal importers? Because bear in mind, there may be illegal importers who are part of a legal system, if you understand what I'm suggesting. So this 57 million, there needs to be further clarification given and further information given on this particular, because the figure is extremely high, that's putting it very lightly, but, my first thought is, I need a lot more information than that.
Because when with regards to our comments about 100 guns used, legal guns used in crime, former Commissioner Griffith pointed out the fact that, look, are you counting when police officers might have misfired a weapon or civilians might have misfired a weapon or self-defense citizens or a whole host of technicalities that could explain, and it's not necessarily like, well, no, robbers taking legal guns used in crime. In this case, non-law enforcement, we take it for granted because we want to lump our Coast Guard and Defence Force in with the police. Use the Defence Force, use the National Security Services to help with crime. But technically speaking, an army arm or a Coast Guard arm are not law enforcement. There's a reason for that, right? They technically are trained in law enforcement. They're supposed to operate under different rules of engagement, conventions, laws, a whole host of things, right? That's why they can't necessarily just use force or arrest people in quite the same manner that the police could do so. So that's one potential explanation. But I think one of the things, though, is that I do have to ask, is it that we don't have a handle on the situation, and the situation is kind of, getting out of control, in the sense that if these bullets are being illegally eventually ending up, whether it's smuggled to somewhere else or used illegally locally. And the guns, we're talking 5,000 guns 1 year, 2,000 guns the next year, 64,000 guns in 2020 with the large chunk of ammunition, and then 43,000 and 2,000.
Is that
when these things are technically brought in legally, right? And if they end up in an illegal End point.
Is that
Is
a
it that
rhetorical
our
question on
accounting
your
is
part?
our accounting? Well, no. It just depends. If all of these things, too much, a lot of them end up in the hands of criminals. The fact that you could legally bring it in but don't have to account for where it's going makes me wonder what's going on. Is it that easy to smuggle guns in that you could literally just bring it in through the front door and then make it disappear? In a country as small as this, 57 million bullets, 64 in 1 year, 1,000 guns. Where did 64,000 guns go?
Is that a rhetorical question?
I guess. No, it's just that because I don't know that these were used illegally, right? But then now I have a hard time trying to figure out what legal use do we have for 64,000 guns in a year?
I find it rather interesting that the very perfectly round figure of 100 guns was given as statistics.
Yes.
You know? It just seems as I often say that I find people call out these perfectly round, wonderful figures that sound very odd when you think about it. How are they collecting this information, right? Do they have all the evidence to prove these things? Because even if you want to scrutinize and question about private citizens and the guns and ammunition that they hold, of course, I think there needs to be an account of that as well. But are we also keeping an account of the guns and ammunition that the Trans-Tobago Police Service have within their realm? The same thing with the Defense Force, the same thing with the Coast Guard. I ask that because if you're telling me that 57 million rounds of ammunition was brought in, I'm assuming that's collated data collected from each legal importer. Mm-hmm. But then how do you have statistics about illegal guns? How do you have statistics about, illegal guns that are on the streets of Trinidad? If you have an understanding of these are how many guns, you should also have an understanding of probably where they're coming from and where they're going to. The thing is that at the end of the day, I think given statistics is not always a very easy thing. Mm-hmm. I want information, I want statistics. But then when the statistics come, I also need clarification in the sense that, in what are you doing about it? What is actually being done about it? Yeah, we're spreading this information all well and good. I want information. What are we actually doing about it? How are we actually resolving the issues of illegal guns on the streets or the ports of entry? Again, need I say, there is no scanners at the port. And it has been suggested by multiple individuals who have spoken to me that when you go to the port to clear a container, many a times these officers of the port, they come and they open the container. They don't even bother to search the container. They don't even bother to go inside. They just literally clear it. So this is why I keep saying you have illegal items possibly coming in, not possibly, illegal items coming in through legal ports of entry. So given these statistics is one thing. You're doing an excellent job in actually cleaning up the mess that's on Trinidad streets.
So, you want to know what one of those cases, 100 sounds like they just were looking for examples and they stopped at 100, right? But then again, that's cherry picking. But you know what, one of those cases, I hope they did count as one of those cases. Well, a legal bullet from a police officer's gun did hit PC Gilks in the back of the neck and it ended in his death, which I do think is a crime. So I hope that was counted as part of the 100.